items today from the board on the agenda? If not, motion for approval. Motion by Leroy Olsey, second. Second by Gene Tiedemann. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. We have two people on the phone today. We have our board member, Les Torgerson, from Clearwater County. We have Stanley Colbert, Carol Wall. I'd like to state that the format has been advertised, published, handovers have been sent to notification. Today we will be having Jerry present his engineering report, which will open it up to the board. Following that, the viewers will do their viewing, open it up to the board for comments or questions. From then on, we will turn it over to the public. We would like everybody to keep it quiet because we're having trouble. We're trying to do the sound here, and we do have a guy that's going to have a mic, so if you're sitting, just raise your arm and state your name. Mr. Keiser will be around with the speakers so you can address your concerns. We'd like to limit the questions, not repeat questions, so we want everybody to have the opportunity to voice their opinion. This time I'm going to turn it over to Council Leroy, or not Leroy, Delrace Harvey for comment.
Good morning. We're just going to kind of detail a little bit of how we got here today. We've had a preliminary hearing in regards to the ditch petition that was presented. The engineer was appointed and directed to prepare a detailed survey report and has been filed with the board. Also, the viewers were appointed and they went out and examined benefits and damages, and their report's been filed with the board. Because of the COVID-19 and the governor's executive orders, we weren't able to have the hearing, pursuant to the regular timeline provided by statute. But there was a request by the petitioners to see if there was the ability to try to take out the final hearing in regard to this matter. And we have tried to do whatever accommodations we can. And it appears that everyone's practicing good social distancing. Appreciate the fact that people are wearing masks. Mr. Keiser, during the public presentation, will be going around with this. He'll wipe it down, each time. So if we can discuss without, having to necessarily touch the mic, I think that would probably be best. And we're going to also acknowledge the callers. We have Minnesota advisory report from the DNR that has to be read into the record. We also have an advisory report from the Minnesota Bowser that'll have to be read into the record. We had requested that if anybody had any written comments that they wanted to provide, they could do that as part of the notice. And we have received 3 written correspondences, and we'll also read those in the record so that everyone will know what those comments were. And we'll open it, to the public after the board has had a chance to ask the engineer and the viewers any questions that they have. And first we'll start with the people in attendance for public comment, and when they're done, we'll also open it up for whoever's available on the telephone, as they could then do some follow-up comments, or provide any comment that they have. And then at that point, once the testimony has been received from all interested parties, my understanding that the board would close the hearing at that point, and then it would just be subject to board discussion and not discussion with the public, and then the board would have the option to either take it under advisement or have full discussion here today and do a vote either to dismiss the petition or to establish the petition.
Thank you, Bill. It's just, do we want to read that now, Myron, or is that the comments coming at the advisory report? Did that take a minute?
I can read this.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I think 2 statutorial things have been omitted from Mr. Harvey's presentation. One of them is this meeting is videotaped. This is a public hearing, and the matter needs to be expressed to all people that this is being videotaped. All comments are now a matter of the official record of this hearing. And secondly, it is statutorily required that a petition
is read at this hearing.
Oh, we got three lawyers here today, Kurt, Del Ray, and Mark here, I guess we were notified that it was under videotape. I guess I don't have any knowledge of,
Nobody's been
petition that you read.
Nobody's been notified of the videotaping. All comments today by the board, whoever, are a matter of official record.
Well, I think that can be recognized at this point,
Yes.
that it is being videotaped and all comments and things are being recorded.
Statutorily, reading of the petition is also required.
And I'm not aware of that. What the statute requires is that a petition. I would just say that I wasn't necessarily aware of that. What the statute requires is that the petition be considered at the time of the final hearing. And the petition has, been presented, to the board. Part of the hearing is consideration of the petition and what's being requested.
I think that there's been notice set for 3 weeks prior to, and all the landowners have received notice, so, we're not gonna stand off here with you and go through the statutory type deal, Mark. We're gonna move on here. If there's some comments that you have.
No, sir. Statutorily, it's required. Statutorily, the petition has been accepted in violation of statute 103E 215, of which the petition was filed. And I'm going to hand out my presentation. Mr. Sparby, please, Chairman. Mr. Sparby, if you read 103E 215, the title.
Improving drainage systems.
Okay, please read 4B.
The petition must be filed with the auditor.
Meaning for a drainage system in Northern Long County with the auditor of the county having the largest property area in the improvement. Polk County auditor never received the filing. This board received the filing of the petition. Goes on to state down in subsection 5, subsequent proceedings, when a petition and bond are required by 103E 2.2 are filed, the auditor shall present the petition to the board at its next meeting.
Well, I think that if you don't like the way we're doing this, there's a process for appeal, Mark. You're not running this meeting today. We're running this meeting. If there's an appeal process, if you want to go through and we're completed with this, you have the right. I don't think that we went through, there's been a lot of things, advertisement. Kurt, you got a comment?
Just to make a record of my position on the petition.
Mr. Peter, nice to meet you, I've never met you.
Nice to meet you.
Sir, before you make a public comment on videotape, you, sir, have admitted, and I have it in writing, you are water advisory to Polk County Commissioners and also to the petitioners. You have a conflict of interest. Any comments that you use today should be stricken from the official record. Secondly, you have also given the board, the watershed board, 3 times under public disclosure that I have copies of opinions of questions that came from minor
Jesme concerning certain procedural things. Thirdly, you have admitted at a training or township or whatever, you have admitted when the questions was asked after you made a presentation to that party, and that party is here today and will witness, you indicated to him when he challenged you on some points, you admitted that you have a conflict of interest in this project.
So be very careful, Mr. Leader,
And what you have to say today. And matter of fact, I would ask the board to have all of his comments stricken from the record because he has no official conflict of interest.
I think that if you want to state your objectives, Mark, that's fine. You're not here to run the meeting. If you want to state them for the record, that's fine. We're going to move on.
I am part of the public.
Yeah, well,
This meeting is being held illegally. Mr. Sparby, read page 2.
I
Page 2.
don't think
Petition.
under the petition, each separate parcel, that means tax ID parcel of the petition shall be recorded. The petition was incomplete as you guys accepted the petition. Two parties. One of them is here today. I don't know if the second one is here today or not. Two parties have signed the petition. Those two, one of the parties has two distinct, separate tax ID numbers on their property where they signed. Next to their name, it says, gives a legal description, no tax parcel number. So the gentleman that signed it does not know what he signed. Is it the closest parcel or the farthest parcel to the project? The other one is in the middle of the parcels, in the middle of the project.
We're not here, Mark, to hear your
The petition has been filed illegally.
Yeah,
The action
well,
of this,
that's in your opinion.
the action of this board has dire consequences financial consequences on the public here. Whether you approve the project or statutorily at the end of this meeting, kill this project. I'm making you aware of statutory violations. And I've got 32 violations.
Well, and there's an appeal process for this when the board is done. You're not here to grandstand for this whole deal here. You've obviously had a lot of time to do
Does
it.
the public want to hear my short presentation? I will take 15 minutes to go through the statutory requirements.
No, we're not here to hear your statutory.
Thirdly, there's 4 violations of the petition. There are 5 violations of the public notice. Thirdly, the gentleman sitting over there, what are they? I forget what they're called.
They're viewers.
According to the documentation that has been submitted to me under public disclosure, they are listed as appraisers. And if you look at the notice that was filed and adopted, and don't give me a smug look, Mr. Jesnick, you approved the viewer's report. The Watershed District approved the viewer's report.
We've had a
The document on the top of the page states appraiser's report. The oath of office that they took states appraisers, does not state viewers. They have a viewer's contract. You guys approved a viewer's contract for viewers, not appraisers.
Well, I don't know if we're here to argue about everything here today, Mark. We're going to move into the engineer's report. You are going to take your place in this like everyone else is doing.
No, sir, I'm not taking my place. This is a public hearing. The only one who's filed and done anything properly is Mr. Pribula. And he's stated numerous times in his verbal that this is a 103E project. The report that will be given by whatever you call them today. Mr. Weisner, are you a licensed appraiser?
No, sir.
Mr. Bennett, are you a licensed appraiser? No. Mr. Wagner, are you a licensed appraiser?
No.
Mr. Baumgartner? Therefore, that official filing of that appraiser's report that you guys filed and accepted back in January 23rd is in violation of even setting the meeting.
So,
Secondly,
if it goes your way, we're good.
I'm sorry.
Everything everybody else has done has been nothing till Mark Holy steps up here and introduces his way of life, and that's the way it is. There is a method, Mark, that if you're in a public hearing here, we will call the authorities if we have to, because this will proceed whether you want it to or not. So, I mean, if you're going to grandstand here for 15, 20 minutes, we do have an obligation to the hearing and to the people. I don't think that you maybe have your following, but we do have a statutory right to follow through with our job as well. I think you're lacking respect for everything everybody else has done here too by you grandstanding. You're thinking you're a big shot doing your homework and doing what you're doing. So, I mean, we're not going to sit here for 15 minutes. You have the right, like everybody else, to state your comment once we've introduced the format to this hearing. If you want to file an appeal once this is done, you have every right as a U.S. citizen to do so. You're not here to disrupt a hearing that everybody else has put a lot of time and effort into to move forward. So I'm going to ask you please to sit down.
I am not sitting down, sir. Secondly, The reports that were collected to do what you're saying you need to do have been filed and collected illegally under state statute 103E numerous times, collectively and individually. 24 violations by the viewers.
There's a process for you to appeal that. We have two attorneys on hand that I don't think are seeing your attorney side of this. You're just gonna stand there then, and that's it.
No, that's not it. And you stated you're not going to listen to me and you're going to go proceed.
We will listen
And
to you.
it's a matter of public record, sir, what you said. You're going to proceed, even though I brought to your attention on one simple, that the petition needs to be filed with the county auditor. Secondly, the petition needed to be certified under a public disclosure that I asked Mr. Jesney on May 3rd of 20. He responded on May 21st. No certification is required, which is a total violation of law. The auditor's office in Polk County.
Is that some of the data requests that you required?
Yes.
That you've never picked up or paid for?
No, I paid for the items.
They were paid for as of yesterday.
I have not picked those items up as of today.
Do you realize how much work that is?
I paid for everything to date, correct?
Are we just asking?
Correct?
No, there was $900 that data that was received.
I have not reviewed it and I have not picked it up.
Okay. Just
Mr. Chairman, this is a matter of legalities, and I stated there are 32 floor violations of the petition, and there's more. There's more. The petition was illegally filed. The names and signatories on the petition are not valid based on individual, separate parcel identifications.
we have a comment from Kurt Dieter. Ricky Newman. Kurt?
My only comment is he definitely has a right to appeal.
Yeah.
The petition was filed because it's an improvement under 103D 605. Improvements have to go to the watershed district. Then you follow 103E. So that an improvement that's within the physical area of a watershed district has to be filed with the watershed district under 103D 605. And again, we can spend the morning arguing where this appeal may go, but the board has a duty to hold the hearing. This gentleman, when it gets time for public input, he can make a record of, but in my opinion, he doesn't get to control the meeting and decide what testimony. He may be making good points. I'm not even going to argue that. My point being, the meeting does not end because he does not agree with Mr. Sparby or myself on the statute.
I think I made that very clear, Kurt, that,
With respect to
I don't know how else to handle this when this is like an unruly, I think maybe we want to call
Mr. Dieter brings up a very valid point, and yes, 103D does allow for that. But even in 103D.211, auditor's certification of petitioners states the auditor that receives a copy of the established petition must determine if the petitioners are resident owners. That never procedurally happened. Therefore, that argument can be thrown out the window. I will sit down and I reserve the right to speak after the engineer's report.
Well, you'll get to speak as long as everybody else does, Mark. You're not the only person here. Jerry, with that, would you give the engineer's report and we'll follow that up with board comment? Did you want to read the advisory?
We gotta read this.
Okay.
This is the statutory requirement as well. Final Directory's advisory report, improvement to Polk County Ditch 39 Red Lake Watershed District Project 179. Dear Watershed District Managers, on behalf of the Commissioners and Department of Natural Resources, I offer the comments and final engineer's report for the above cited project in accordance with Minnesota Statute 103E301. The final survey and engineer's report is approved as an acceptable plan to drain for property affected. However, we ask for consideration be recommended. Please continue to work with the West Polk SWCD Wetland Conservation Act, WACA, Administrator of the U.S. Corps and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on the completing the wetland delineation report in the project vicinity. This is a requirement in all projects that may impact wetlands. Please continue to consult with the State Historical Preservation Office in the project. If possible, obtain written documentation from SHPO that they have reviewed the area and our new historical or cultural features within the project footprint. To prevent wildlife entanglement and webbing, the DNR recommends using wildlife-friendly erosion control. There are Category 3N or 4N in the 2016 and 2018 Minnesota DOT standard specifications for construction. Visit the Minnesota DNR online handout at Wildlife-Friendly Erosion Control for additional information. We also recommend utilizing cellulose-based hydromulch without mulch green coloring. Products containing plastic polypropylene fiber and mulch green color should be avoided. DNR recommends that UC mixes incorporate perennial flowers that are pollinator friendly. You will also find native state seed mixes for prairie parkland region on the Board of Soil Water Resource website. Thank you for your consideration of these comments. We look forward to continue to work with the Red Lake Watershed District on this and other projects. For any other questions, further details on our concerns, please contact area hydrologist Stephanie Climate at 218-219-8585 or stephanie.climate@state.mn.us. Sincerely, Nathan Kestner, Eco Water Regional Manager.
Thank you, Myron.
Bowser is not statutorily required to provide a final engineer's report for the improvement petition. They did supply a preliminary report for the preliminary hearing, and that was presented to the record at the time.
Okay, thank you, Myron. I think, Jerry, at this time, we're going to open it up. We're going to let you do your whole presentation. The board has any questions, we will ask that. At that point, we'll go into the viewers / appraisals, I guess, at that point, and we'll ask questions from those guys as well. Jerry?
Is it working?
Nope.
Is it working now? There, okay.
There you go.
My name is Jerry Gribula. I was appointed the engineer for this particular project. Ben is here. He's helping me with the presentation. And my job today is to explain the project to you folks so you understand what has been proposed and what has developed since the preliminary meeting. After the preliminary meeting and we got the comments from Bowser and the DNR, the report was revised. It took into consideration what the recommendations were, and sections were added to the preliminary report that addressed the Bowser and DNR concerns. And at the preliminary hearing, there was some discussion that we need to, the preliminary report, which is a very important part of this project, we have to address the water that breaks out of Polk County Ditch 66. So the preliminary report did bring this up, and the petition as requested didn't deal with how we're going to handle with this water. The only thing the original report said is we're going to let it come and we're going to let it flow unfeathered through the existing culverts that were through County Road 22. That's the Schrack Road. At that time, the board had some testimony from some landowners in the vicinity, and they said, well, that's kind of foolish just to let the problem go without being addressed. So at that point, they asked me to look at channeling that water to, if it's going to end up in the new ditch, we need to provide some way that it's going to get there in an orderly manner. So what the board instructed me to do is we looked at two different options, and we settled on that we were going to extend the ditch 1 mile. This is the Schrack Road, and originally the project was petitioned from the Grand Marais here down by Kurt's house, Kurt Tomlinson, and it follows the south side. And it's the old alignment of the Polk County Ditch 39. Actually, the original ditch was dug an extra mile, and It was dug in 2003. And within 2 years of 2003, they dug another ditch because they realized all these east-west ditches are still, you're picking up water that's coming from way far east. So this ditch was dug 2-3 years after 2003, or 1903. And so what that ditch did is it basically cut off that first mile, but it's never been abandoned or fully taken off the ditch system. So what the change is, and if you folks were at the original presentation hearing of our preliminary report, the project started at the Murray and it went up to the east side of County Road 22. This report includes an additional mile of ditch, and that's what I'm here to present today. So I'm going to tell you what the ditch is going to look like, and then I'm going to tell you how it's going to, what kind of well, first of all, I'll tell you the standards. The ditch is designed to do what's called a 10-year event, and that's kind of the standard for all agricultural drains. That there are committees that the joint boards have put together that are called technical advisory committees, and they've come up with standards that we're supposed to consider, and we're not probably only supposed to consider, we should try to follow very closely. So one of those reports is how we design ditches, to what standard, and how we design culverts within those systems. And so this project was, we consciously considered those recommendations, and we followed them in the design of the project that I'm presenting to you today, which is the final engineering report. So, so that's the standard that the ditch is designed to, and it is the intent. If the ditch is designed properly, which hopefully it is, that the intent is that everybody receives a minimal degree of service. In other words, you can have a 10-year event and you still will be able to outlet the water to the ditch, and that the water surface elevation in the ditch, we call that the water surface profile, the ditch is big enough so that water elevation stays low enough so the people along the ditch can drain into it, that you have access to it when you need it. So that is when the engineer designs the ditch, he takes that into consideration, because we need to have a channel big enough that will funnel the water through the system, and the water elevation will stay low enough in the ditch where everybody will have reasonable access to the positive drainage. And so that's being said, it's not rocket scientistry, it's just hydraulics, and so we calculate the drainage area that we anticipate, and we design the channel accordingly. This project's a little different because we're starting out with a big flow beyond what we normally would for a 10-year event, and it's because of the known flow that's coming out of 66. And we've been at this process probably 3 years or more. This report was prepared in January of this year, so we've been waiting for 7 months to present it. And when we prepared the report, we realized that this one's very much different. And in the process of the 3 years, I've had an opportunity to go out there on 66 4 times and see overflow. So it's not something that we imagine. It's very real. 66 does break out, and it breaks out. Lately, it's been breaking out fairly frequent. So I think it's real. It's real, and we need to address that in some manner. So this preliminary report addresses that outbreak, and the project is designed to handle a limited amount of that outflow. So go to the next page, please. This is just to show you what the ditch is gonna look like. If you were standing in the bottom of the ditch and you were looking to the east, this would be on the very bottom end, down by Kurt Amundsen's yard in the very deepest part. The in-slope is the slope from the road is on 6-to-1, and that's a requirement because it's a county road and they have highway requirements that you can't, for a certain distance from the shoulder of the road, it has to be that. We could have went steeper, we could have benched it down, but it only amounted to maybe 5 more feet. So we decided that that in-slope would be an extension of what's already there. The ditch would be deeper, and it would come back at a steeper back slope. The back slope on all these different cross sections is 3-to-1 to 4-to-1. So that's about a slope like that, which is mowable. And the reason we tightened it up a little bit is that we were conscious that the ditch is starting to take up a lot of area, it's taking up a lot of land, and we had to also, beyond the back slope, we have a statutory 16.5. So we tightened up the design a little bit because we felt we wanted to consolidate what's there. And we wanted to get the ditch deep enough so what you would see is this area right here is what is going to be excavated out and it's going to be piled up. This is in section 17 and 18 of Sullivan. Here we're moving to the east. This is section, this is 17, 18, this is 16. So you can see that the ditch is getting shallower. It has the same in-slope and back slope. Next page, Ben, please. And this is the bottom end, the very far east end, and it's a lot shallower, and the right-of-way is narrower, and the spoil is a lot less and a lot lower. Our concern is when we design the ditch, if we're going to take that kind of flow that's coming out of 66, we have to keep the water surface profile low enough so that it's below the field elevation, yet the spoil is there to protect the land, so the ditch doesn't inadvertently flood you. The worst thing that can happen is you get flooded by something you're going to be paying for. So the intent is when the ditch hits capacity, you might not be able to drain into it, but the intent is that you don't get flooded by it. And right now what's happening, there are certain places in Keystone Township that get flooded quite. They're the first place to experience the overflow, and then that we're trying to avoid that from happening on an event that's 10 years smaller. Next page then. This is just a detail of the field inlets. And being we got the field inlets, I think there's some concern from folks that are on the north side of the ditch or the north side of the highway, or the county road, I guess, that they're not going to have very good access to the drain. And the project will, as we go from west to east, we'll be putting in probably 3 24-inch culverts through each mile line. They won't necessarily be at the township road locations because sometimes that's not the best place to put them, because if the water's coming from the east and your land is flowing west, it doesn't do us no good to put a culvert on the east end of your quarter. So we will look at each adjacent property owner. Sometimes if a guy owns an 80 and there's an 80 and they've got an existing drain, we'll put a 24-inch pipe across the county road. So we want everybody to have access to the drain because if you're receiving benefits, you should get some benefits from it. And we have to limit the amount of culverts that come through the county road because it is a county road, and so the culverts will be less, but they will be bigger. Those culverts we will put in, unless there's some other reason, they will all be 24-inch culverts. They will be passing through the county road. The existing culverts that are there will stay in place. There's some 15 and 18-inch culverts, so there's very minimal culverts here now, so we plan to add them. And then, of course, on the south side, it's a lot easier to access the ditch, and we anticipate working with each and every landowner. And we did, when we did the survey, we went out there, Ben and I went out and did the measuring, and we located the field drains that were there. And in some sections, there was 13 of them, field inlets, and some there was less. But what we're going to shoot for a goal is when we actually, if we build a project, that we will work with the landowners and try to get somewhere around 7 per mile. So you would have one on the quarter line if you have a quarter section, and then on your own quarter you would have 3 inlets on your side, and your neighbor would have 3. Or we'll work with that. So the reason I bring that up is it shows the detail of the field inlets. They are a little bit special because we're receiving some grant money, so we have to install them like they want if we get their money. Like most things, if you get free money, you have to do something to get free money. And so they would be rock rip-wrapped, and they will be they'll be recessed into the bank of the field side. So when you look down the ditch, you won't even see the field inlets, and the ice and the water won't hit them. They'll be pulled back a little bit, and the rock will be, you'll see the rock coming down from them. I think the project, and I'm just working from memory, originally received about $58,000, but there might be some more money that is available, that's become available in the last time we've been waiting to go forward. So those, that's a benefit to the project. That's good that we put the rock, and it's good everybody gets access to the ditch, and it's good we get money to help pay for it. Next. Okay, that's just a list of all the culverts the field inlets that we have to put that in to get the grant. Okay, so this is where we're starting. This is Kurt Ellis's yard. And what this is, and I apologize if the screen is wavy, it's kind of goes in and out of focus, but the drain will daylight out, or in other words, we'll find the natural grade somewhere between the driveway on the quarter line and the Murray, and this section of ditch will be rip-wrapped according to the DNR's recommendations. So the ditch will move along the south side, and there'll be field inlets coming in. We'll go to the next page, Ben. And this is more a typical mile. This is the bottom of the ditch, and then this is the water surface profile. This is the field elevation. So here you can see we've got a big separation between the bottom of the ditch and where the water is. In this area, when we start out, the ditch is running between 9 and 11 feet below the field elevation. The existing ditch looks a lot bigger than it really is because the county road is 5 feet above the field elevation. And sometimes if you've ever driven down the Tabor Road ditch, you look at that, that's a deep ditch, but then you look at the adjacent fields and holy cow, why is there so much water and if the ditch is so deep? And the reason is it's shallow. And so the ditch right now probably is running about, at this end, it's probably running about 4 feet below field elevation. So in other words, right now, if you get 4 or 5 feet of water running in the existing ditch, you don't want it to go any higher because it'll start backing into the fields. Polk County was taking care of this ditch for many years. They were experiencing this problem. The county upsized all the culverts, thinking it's a culvert problem. We just need bigger culverts. That would solve the problem. It did help a little bit, but it did take the ditch to a 10-year event. And so that's why the petition came, is that we not only need proper culvert sizes, we also need drop. And right now, when we start on this end, the new drop in the ditch is 2.9 feet per mile. So in a mile, that's how much grade we are. So people say, well, maybe you're just getting on a hand. It shouldn't have to be that deep, but if you can't get that much grade in a mile, you probably shouldn't do it. And in my experience, you can dig a ditch with that much grade, but it ends up with cattails and it just doesn't work. And then everybody says, we got to clean the ditch, and so what we end up is dragging cattails out. So I don't feel that the design is excessive. I feel it's necessary to have at least close to 3 feet of drop per mile if you expect the velocity to run about 2 feet per second or less. And when we design a ditch, we don't want the ditch to go screaming fast. We want it to carry the water but go slow enough so we don't cause a lot of undercutting and erosion and side slopes. So all along the ditch, the velocity or the speed of the water is at an acceptable, small enough level where we don't have a lot of maintenance problems. And so if we just go from sheet to sheet, then we're proceeding to the east. You can see that the water surface and the bottom of the ditch, it stays at about 3 to 5 feet. At design, if you start out on the east end, I'm going from memory, but the water surface, the water depth in the new ditch, because we widened it places where we needed to get more capacity, but the ditch is designed to run about 3-4 feet deep, except on the very bottom end because we're just congregating more water and water. But when we get to the point where we start moving further east, keep going down. This is Polk County 66, and I'll bring that up. This is probably 4 miles upstream. This is, I can't read what section we're in. 14. So 1 more mile we get to the township line. There's an existing box culvert through. This is Polk County 66. It's a paved road. There's a 10 by 4 foot box culvert in place. It's the correct size. It is at the correct elevation, so we don't have to disturb the road. But as we get further and further this way, the water surface profile in our ditch at design flow is getting closer and closer to the field elevation, which is bad for you if you live next to that field. You want that water to be much lower than your field elevation. So when you get to a point where you hit field elevation, you lose drainage. So we designed the ditch to try to keep that water elevation below the field. And then we put field inlets in. So go 1 more then. I think if you get to section, and this is important because there is such a thing as thoughtful design. And that means the engineer actually, I don't know if they should use that term, but he used his head, did it right. But in section 18 of Keystone, I want to be in 18 then. This is where you got the 13 field inlets. This is where you got a berm that's 2 feet high, and this is where, if you didn't have this berm 2 feet high, this particular property is the first to suffer under the existing ditch system. It's the first overflow, and it's located in section 18, Keystone, which is owned by Folsom. He owns the whole sections. He has a tile pump. He has a tile, probably has a tile because he can't get no surface drainage. And so this is key to our thoughtful engineering process, that this is where the water surface profile comes closest to the field elevation. Yet it is a 10-year design. So as you go further west, you'll find out, hey, I'm getting a better deal. I'm going to get rid of my water more often than the guy out east because his land, the water surface profile is closer to his land. But you can't design a ditch and not have drop. So inadvertently, you create more separation just because you need drop for water to run downhill, and you need cross section. So the ditch is designed so that everybody will get a minimum of a 10-year design. Keep going one more, Ben, or take me to the end if you would, please, the project. Okay, this is the section, one more, Ben. Okay, this is Polk County 22, or the Chirac Road. The Marabit site is here. This section was added to the petition, and it's a very minimal change, but primarily it's important to understand where the water is coming from out of County Road 66. So maybe Ben, if you could back up to the very beginning, and I will try to explain to you what I think is happening on the cover sheet. This is right here is ditch 66. This is the Chirac Road. We're added that mile. What's happening is the beginning of 66 is over here. It just picks up a natural coulee and it flows, and the water, the drainage area is quite large, and at times, particularly in the spring, it does overflow. And when it does overflow, it overflows into this area here. It'll go over the road here. It'll go over the road here. And more importantly, what happens to the water when it does go over the road, and where does it go? And I was under the wrong assumption. I think when this land does flood, it does go north. It will flow north. It try to get back into 66. But what can't get north will leave a pond in here. And once it moves to this location, it isn't ever going back east. So what happens is the water that overflows actually tries to get back into 66 again. 66 will overflow in other places, but primarily the water we're going to have to be dealing with is the water that's to the south of where we are. And so that's why the water congregates in this corner of the section, and that's why we have to design it big. This is big enough, unless we're going to. We could do one of three things. We could fix 66. That won't happen in my lifetime. We can plug the culverts that are coming through the paved road. Good luck. We ain't going to plug any culverts that are coming through Polk County 22. So we have 3 36-inch culverts now that are coming. And our new ditch is designed to handle the maximum flow that 3 36-inch pipe can deliver. That's why we started out with a flow rate that's much larger. If we were designing to drain this quarter and start a new ditch, we would start out about 27 cubic feet per second. We're starting out at about 110 because we're allowing for 99 CFS that's coming from breakout flow. And that won't happen every time. It will only happen when the breakout flow comes. But by past experience, it happens quite regularly. And it would be, I did talk to Rich Sanders. He says, can I plug your culverts? He says, I don't care, but I know a lot of people who would. So, you know, in reality, nobody likes to handle that breakout flow, but there's no way we're going to stop it. We need to account for it when we dig this ditch, because it's going to take the water, like it or not. So what we did in the process, we worked very closely with the viewers, because they were struggling with how do you handle that. I mean, you know, do the people digging this ditch just pony up and pay for that overflow? And so what we did is they asked me to calculate the cost of digging this ditch from here as Petition to handle a normal 10-year event in the beginning. And then they asked me, figure the cost of the ditch to dig a ditch that will handle a 10-year event and the overflow. The incremental cost is not as great as I thought it was going to be, but it was $200,000 extra cost to design the ditch all the way to handle that extra 99 CFS. So that information was provided to the viewers as for information on what does it cost to funnel that water through the system. And so that was roughly 9.5% of the total estimated cost. And I'm starting to talk too much now, but I think you understand what the ditch will look like. You can, you know what to expect as far as what kind of access am I going to get to this ditch. You know what to expect on how often you can expect the ditch to surpass its design capacity. And if we do build the ditch, nothing is set in concrete. I work with each and every property owner, and if you can justify to me why you need another field limit, you probably will get one. But if you want, I don't think you're going to get 13, because you wouldn't want 13 if I gave you 13, because you're going to have to farm around each and every one of them. But if you can consolidate, my goal is to make the farmers feel like they got a good deal and they were treated fair and equally. That being said, it's the best I can do.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. At this time, I think we'll turn it over to the board. Is there any questioning from the board to Jerry?
I got a question. Well, first, I think it's County Road 20.
Oh, that's the Shack Road?
Anyway, I live off the country, and you said that County Ditch 39 actually went by where the Ditch 66 is now?
It was originally constructed another mile, and then up to here, and then this actually is 66 now. This is the 66 ditch, and this is actually a lateral to 66.
I think the lateral is the other way. I think that's the other way around. The one going straight east is lateral C or whatever.
Okay, so 66 actually, it's part of that system is another ditch, and this mile got taken over by when that project.
That's C, on C, but that's the outlet to
Grantham Common, yeah. So a lot of water comes through here and goes up here. And
not as much as it used to be.
No. And of course, this outlets into ditch 2, which they want about as much water as you guys want.
Any other questions, Gene?
Well, yeah, I don't farm anything on the Keystone there. I'm in Yuba, just across the road. And now we're going to be charged an outlet fee. Can you explain that? That's that 200 grand, right?
Right. The 200 is the, if I would have took the petition and 66 went to them there and I said, okay, start draining this land to the Grand Marais, I would start out with a very small flow because I would figure I'm probably picking up a square mile. Typically, a square mile of drainage runs right around 27 CFS, cubic feet per second. But the culverts through County Road here, there's 3 existing ones, and there's 2 at the quarter line that are on the north side of the Mara Beach site. So we had to, there was existing culverts, way too big for a normal ditch, and we know why they were there, is they was to let the water move, right? So we had to design this ditch bigger all the way along to handle the extra 99 CFS that was coming beyond the 20. So it was an upgrade to say, hey, we got a lot of water coming. We can say we don't want it, but to answer your question, it's the incremental cost of a normal ditch to a ditch that's handling flows that it shouldn't get.
Any other questions from the board of directors? We're going to open it up to the public once the viewers and everything is done. If there are no other questions from the board, we will turn it over to Robert Wagner. You're going to do the viewers report?
Yes.
Welcome, Robert.
Thank you. Hey, I'm Robert Wagner, one of the viewers on the project here. We have Mike Baumgarten, excuse me, Roger Leisinger, and Jerry Bennett as an alternate. Okay. We can go to the next slide, please. These are just the definitions. The drainage authority means the board or joint drainage authority having a jurisdiction over this, and that basically referring to the watershed here. Benefits means improvement of properties in terms of increased value, production capacity, and/or utility resulting from the construction of public and private drainage system. Some background information. Petition, farm operators held meetings following wet conditions in 2016, which resulted in the petition being filed with the Red Lake Watershed to construct an improvement on this particular ditch. Petition was prepared by legal counsel, filed with the Board of Managers of the Red Lake Watershed, with Minnesota Statutes 103E. 2 and 5. A copy of the signed petition is included in the engineer's exhibit. And I guess it started out with the 103E. And when we took over it, we followed the 103E. Took the oath of office on June 24th. And then the process that we use to do the benefits is we review the historic drainage system records, including original plan profiles, service reports, used to create that original system. We identify lands and properties currently using the current system. Review the contour maps, aerial photos, LiDAR, and other data to determine the drainage project or boundaries. Evaluate the land use within the drainage system, including those lands that are restricted, mainly the wetlands that haven't been updated. Then we determine the property values based on similar groups of properties, classifications, sales in the area, and such. We identify the existing ditch right of way, and then identify areas for the establishment of the one-rod grass strip and the amount of damage payments for the property that's necessary. Okay. This, just for reference, is the current benefit map on ditch 39. And that's what's currently on it. Okay, next please. This is the current benefit map for ditch 66 with 39, starting here for the project and going to the west. Okay. This is the current benefit map for ditch number 40, which is just north of the ditch that we were working on, ditch 39. Factors that we use in the analysis are the land values, like I said, extracted from sales data and land use, drainage system in its current 3-year design, drainage in its proposed 10-year design. We take into account private improvement costs for you to get the water to get into the ditch system. We look at the topography and the proximity factors. Do you have direct drainage into the ditch, or is it an indirect drainage? We look at what is considered a secondary outlet, and then the landowner meetings, which were held in July 2019. We get estimates from the landowners there as far as the rents, values, and also where at that point in time they can kind of tell us what the current drainage patterns are. This is the benefit of the map that we propose to come up with. You'll see this area is what we consider the Ag 1 crop, with a benefit of $350 per acre. Then the area 2, which is this, and right here, that's reduced. My notes here so I know what I'm saying. Using the market value also and analyzing those provides additional benefit, but they're not right on the ditch. Area 3 is the blue, kind of the blue area here, and the blue area down here. That's an outlet benefit. Basically what we're saying is what the other ditches can't handle, or what is backing up from this current ditch, will now be taken care of with an improvement there. And that is at $50 an acre for that. And then we have area 5. Okay, right here is area 5, and up here it has somewhat of an outlet benefit, and that's down at $25 per acre. Any woodlots that are in there would go at that same $25 per acre. Woodlots are conservation land. And then for converted wetlands, and we use the wetland index to look at those. We cannot get the records from the ASC, or not ASC, what am I trying to say? FSA office. Because those are private. So we look at the national inventory of wetlands. And any wetland that has been converted into tillable now, it's valued at $1,250 per acre. Wetlands that are currently wetlands have a zero benefit to them. This is just an example of the Plaque Maps that we use when we do our work. Got parcel numbers on it and such, and basically these are what we draw on and look at along with the LiDAR and all the other mapping techniques to come up with the different classifications of land within a parcel. Okay. We've got some other benefits. Wetland Conservation Act basically comes down to the wetlands regulated by federal or state law should not be subject to drainage benefits. And that's why the actual wetlands have a zero benefit to them. Other land classifications, like I said, the conservation or woodlot, they're $25 an acre. Non-converted wetlands, 0, and converted wetlands from the National Wetland Inventory are at $1,250 per acre. Okay, this is dealing with the outlet benefit for Ditch 66. As viewers, we were out there numerous times. We were out there when the water was high and the water was breaking out. Right here, we found it breaking out here and along here, and actually this kind of flowed through before it got up to the ditch. So that's what Jerry was talking about, the area of county ditch that actually overflows currently, and taking that into account. And we look at a one-time outlet fee, like Jerry said, based on the improvement to accommodate what is currently happening there. And that was the $200,000 that he straight up went off. Okay. Benefits to roads and corporations. How that's done is what land it borders, whether it's that Area 1, Area 2, Area 3, that's how that is calculated. But Polk County Highway has 225 acres along the project, and their portion would be 59,200. Sullivan Township has 97 acres of township road, and their benefit came out to 11,350. Keystone Township has 109.85 acres, which comes out to $18,642.50 of benefit. Let's see. Permanent right-of-way damages, the acreage that has to be purchased is at $5,000 times the $76.55, or excuse me, 76.55 acres. So those damages would total $382,750. The temporary construction is based on a figure of $320. You come up with that by basically looking at rents out there and from what the landowners have told us rents were out there. So we're looking at approximately $160 per acre for 2 years for that temporary construction right away. There's 107.84 acres, which adds up to $34,508.80. So the total damages would be $417,258.80 for the land. Going to the benefits of the land, this comes off the slide that had the Area 1, 2, and 3. The total benefits to the land in the project is $2,177,523. To that, you add the benefits to the roads and corporations. We add the outlet benefit for County Ditch number 66, $200,000. And this is a total of the roads and corporation. The grand total benefits comes down to $2,466,715.50. That's the total benefits for the project. Taking that, here's where that total comes from, the benefits to the land. There's a The improvement value that we used, that we got from Jerry, is $2,101,000 improvement. We came up with this much benefit. That works into a levy rate here of 0.85, and actually that's about, I don't know, six or eight decimal places, so it's carried out very far. Then from that, like this one, we had the $350 benefit on that, times the levy rate percentage, comes down to $298.11 per acre. And over here, we have amortized it based on a 20-year amortization, and there isn't any interest or anything else in there. That's just a simple amortization. The very right-hand column here is totaling up the total acres times that levy rate. We come down here and we end up with the $2,101,000, which is the cost for the improvement that we're using. Again, actual costs may vary. These are estimates, and they're based on the engineer's cost for the project. I guess we'll go.
Yeah, I guess for the record, Rob, I would like the viewers to maybe do a little background of the history. You have a long history with these viewers. Maybe just identify, starting with Jerry. I know Mike came on late, he's in the learning period, but maybe Rob, stating by what you've done in your life, and this isn't a random.
My past life here is, I actually farmed for 10 years, grew up on a farmed probably, let's see, Nesbitt Township, that area. After I quit farming, I went into real estate for a few years, and after that I started working for the Polk County Assessor's Office. I've been with the Assessor's Office in Polk County for 30 years, 20 of them as the county assessor. So there's a little background that I have with this Polk County property.
Jerry?
Okay, Jerry, like to see all you guys here. Yeah, I've worked for a consulting engineering firm for a while. I did a lot of drainage work in the 80s. Worked with drainage cleanouts and improvements, and we did 280 miles. So been through a number of hearings, seen it quite through viewers reports, worked with a lot of viewers as well. Worked as construction manager on projects and also as a district administrator as well. And since that, prior to that, I've been, doing some of the drainage projects, helping out some of the boards with viewing on projects because I have enjoyed work and I've worked with the drainage systems. So I don't know how many viewers reports I've worked on, quite a few with Red Lake. We've done some in central Minnesota, done the Sox, and some of the other ones as well. So that's involved in a few different projects.
My name is Roger Weisslinger. I farmed for 25 years. I spent 20 years in law enforcement. I've been viewing with different groups, different watershed districts for over 20 years. I feel that what I bring to the table with my coworkers, I try to look at the farmer's side of it, since I wasn't farming for 25 years. We have a very good blend of people here. We have someone who is very knowledgeable on taxes and land values. We have someone who is very good on the administration end of it. And I feel that I'm helping the farmland evaluating and the benefits of the district. I'm Mike Montgardner from Roseville. I grew up on a farm in Roseville. My dad was a farmer. My farm, I went to school at UND, got down there in 1972.
from 72 until about 5 years ago. I farmed full-time south of Roseau. I also did some crop spraying, area spraying for a few years. Until I had an eye injury, I had to quit that monkey business. And I think what I can bring to the table maybe is my experience in agriculture. And I think my ability probably to listen to people and listen to different opinions and try to figure stuff out so it's fair for everybody. I was fortunate, I guess, and that was in my first life. I was fortunate to play hockey enough before a little bit after that, and that was a fun thing, but that's long time ago. That's long time ago.
All right. Thank you, guys. I just wanted a little history for the 1 to 10 minutes. Any questions from the viewers from the board? Myron, we got written comments or correspondence of any sort?
Yes, we received 3 letters and emails to be read to the hearing, as well as we just received one today. So I'll start with Peter Giesick. Forgive me if I say your name wrong. Dear board members, I strongly oppose the project on the basis that the final engineer's report overstates the benefit of my property and the cost burden to property owners will be levied at a particularly poor time considering the near-term economic outlook. My property in northeast quarter of Section 8 has demonstrated consistent productivity improvements over the past decade due to primarily to prudent improvements in exceptional land management practice, including property and access management, as well as tillage and crop management. I do not believe the engineer's report fairly or comprehensively assesses the benefits of my parcels. Additionally, the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is only the beginning and is likely to be very much more significant in the next few years. The conception of this project and preparation of the engineer's report, which includes cost-benefit assessments, were based on pre-COVID pandemic conditions. Therefore, the basis and the framework of the cost-benefit assessment is reasonably no longer valid. I propose the cost and benefit assessment be reconsidered and the program be intentionally delayed to allow future economic conditions resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic to be better understood. Sincerely, Peter Giesick, Northeast Section 8, Township 152, Range 48. Then we received a letter from Keystone Township, I believe. I was given it to an email, I couldn't read it. So I asked again for them to send me another letter, which they did this morning, or yesterday, I can't remember, but I do have an unsigned version. I can just assume it's the same one. So I'll read, if you can verify that this is the same one. Fine. Okay. All right. So I do have one that was signed, which I couldn't read, and now I do have one that I can read very clearly. So, to the Board of Managers of the Red Lake Watershed District, we, the supervisors of Keystone Township, are not in favor of Project 179. We told the partitioners that we would not go along with this. It started out going to Sullivan Keystone line, and then we hear that they want to go all the way to County Ditch 20. I'm assuming meaning County Road 20. Now they are going almost to ditch 66. The problem with the ditch is Sullivan Township the problem with the ditch is in Sullivan Township about 3 miles west of County Road 66, if there is a problem at all. Keystone Township and landowners are getting the majority of the cost for this project, which we are not in favor of. It is not right we are getting railroaded into this. We will continue to dispute this with every landowner affected by this in mind. We don't see how the group from Sullivan Township can just walk over Keystone Township to get them to pay for their ditch, and we are just opposed to it. We are just supposed to go along with it. Then I just received one from Curtis Plotnick, which I was a pleasure of speaking to. He called, he sent this letter just today, he gave it to me this morning actually. Dear Board of Managers, this letter is to serve as my objection to the above named project. I received your undated letter entitled Notice of Final Hearing, postmarked July 10, 2020. I am puzzled with the title Final Hearing. Were there other hearings conducted? I never received notice of them. My first objection to the project is moving the jurisdiction from the ditch to Polk County, from Polk County to the Red Lake Watershed District. Does Polk County no longer wish to be responsible for the maintenance of the ditch, or there are other reasons for this change? And if so, what are the reasons or requirement for a change of jurisdiction? My second objection has to do with the cost of the project. Before I moved to my present location, I lived in Reed Township, North Dakota. I have a highly populated township adjacent to West Fargo. While at the location, I served many years as chair of the Reed Township Board of Supervisors. I was thus involved in a number of ditch projects, and the cost per mile of these projects was nowhere near the cost per mile of this project. I am unable to readily find any information on the internet identifying the tremendous cost of this project. I contend this information should have been shared with us prior to the final hearing. This information may be in the final engineer's report, which I was also not able to find on the internet. My third objection to the continuance of the proposed project has to do with the summary of the Bureau's report. I am unable to find this report showing how the benefits were calculated and arrived at. This information should have been readily available to us on the internet before this final hearing. The summary report shows my contribution to the project exceeds the benefits I will receive, which is in parentheses 42,050 versus 44,514. And this deficit could well increase as bids may exceed the current estimated cost by up to another 30%, per the summary report of March 24, 2020. I counted 81 landowners involved with this project. I have difficulty thinking the project should be approved with this number of landowners seeing a negative impact from the project. Surely this is not the situation where some landowners will receive a benefit at the expense of the other landowners. I suggest all landowners and tenants need to have more information available to them, especially at this time when landowners cannot afford additional taxes that provide no benefits. Especially in this time when the agricultural economy is not great. Investment in land today is providing a near 2% return. Those landowners cannot afford additional taxes that provide no benefit, and tenants cannot afford unnecessary expenses. In conclusion, I request this project may be put on hold or abandoned until above issues are resolved. Curtis and Bannock, Wilford Trails Acres. Then I did receive, after the preliminary hearing, back in June 25th, 2019, we received a handwritten letter from Norma Hotfit-Icano from Rice Creek, Fribble, Minnesota, and I will make an attempt to read it. I'm not going to guarantee I'll be able to read it properly, but I'll try. Mr. Dale M. Nelson, this letter is in regards to the Red Lake Watershed District, improvement to Polk County Ditch 39. My parcel of farmland, 80 acres, property ID number 66.0047.01, is on the west side of the road or the north side of the ditch, section 9, Sullivan Township, 15249. The northeast half of the southeast quarter, which was included in the 2006 Polk County Red Lake Watershed District, ditch number 11, project 166, of which is assessed $7,563, to provide agricultural water drainage from my farmland. The water drainage from my land flows north into ditch 11 at a decline of a foot. To the mile, you must be able to read right, you better leave it. Anyway, to the mile into ditch 11. So there is no benefit for me with my farmland in the ditch 39. Project south side of Township Road 265. There is no culvert in the west, to the west, or at the intersection of the north side ditch that my farmland is, or Township Road 65. The road ditch that my farmland is or drains north of the ditch 11. The ditch 39 project 179 is no benefit to my 80-acre parcel of farmland. Thank you for your consideration. Norma Outfit, Iconic 593 Range Street, Garrettsburg, Minnesota.
Is that it, Mike?
That's all I have.
All right, at this time, I'm gonna open up the public comment. I'm running the meeting here. I'm gonna open this up to public meeting. Sir, we have, state your name and your,
You get the wrong letter up when you wrote mine. But for Jerry, back to that ditch 66 again. Now, the water coming from the east on 66, does that end up in, or does it go angled up on 66 continuing, or does any of that water end up in this particular project?
Part of it does, part of it will continue north, it can go through that intersection where it comes of it, so, but it is enough flow to keep the 3 36-inch culverts flowing full at the mile to the west, so that's kind of the choke point is when that section floods, these 3 culverts can only flow full. And so that's kind of the amount of water that will go into the new system.
And that's the coming from the east, not the little short 66 that's the big ditch that comes from the east.
It's the shortcut ditch that's going to the south and east on the angle, yes.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that little short one. Isn't there a 66, is there a main 66 going straight east?
Yes, what happens there is when the flow goes so high, it goes to that culvert. The water will actually come down here, it will go over the big culvert here and it'll flood into here. The water that's coming from here. And then it goes back again. But primarily the water that the system is going to pick up is coming straight out from this line.
But at the present time, that water from the east does not end up in the ditch that's there now.
It does because it's coming from
that
this one.
one, so it ends up in straight east.
I don't know for certain where it's coming from, but what I've observed when it's coming from here, it breaks over the spoil where this big culvert is and it goes that way.
So is that going to be, that's not going to get all of them, that water from the east?
It will, this will continue to fill here and it goes back here and it goes over the road here and it goes back in, so it does go over the road here and it's primarily water making a circle.
I got it. Thank you.
that water that comes from straight east, there's 66 and it fills it up. So that, so that actually contributes to the overflow by the gas pipe.
Yeah, it's using up the capacity that this could take.
Water is funky.
Yeah, the water, what Gene says is the water that's coming from this way will take the capacity up of this ditch, so it causes this ditch to be so full that it will overflow. And that's true.
Okay, there's another comment there, sir?
Well, thank you very much.
I got 3 questions. Jerry, how deep are you going to do section 14?
Can we state the name for the...
I appreciate it. So from ditch, County Road 20 to the east, how deep are you going to make that ditch? And then what are you going to do? Are you putting a different culvert in through County Road 620? That's the first question. I got 2 more.
What was the first question, Mike? Can you repeat that, please?
I want to know how deep he's going to make that ditch from County Road 20.
Yeah, okay.
How much deeper is it going to be? And then what are you doing on County Road 20?
That's a lot. Okay, there'll be a new 24-inch culvert through the county road that will be directionally bored, but
How much deeper than what's there, Jerry?
it's going to be 2 feet deeper than the ditch on this side. We started this ditch 2 feet lower from the original petition, so and what we plan on doing is to mitigate the increase in size by blocking the bigger culvert off roughly 2 square feet, whatever the equivalent opening is.
So just to make sure, you're dropping about 2 feet from what's there right now?
Yes, and the reason we're doing that is right now, Right now it's flat, we can't get any drop from it. We didn't want to do anything with this corner, inner culvert. So right now, this culvert down on the county road is only a half a foot lower than this one.
So are you dropping that ditch then from 20 to the east, 1, 2, 3, 2?
It was in the original design because of the water that was coming through the two 48-inch culverts by the Lamera beach site. So those culverts were lower than this one, so we felt we had to be that low to take the flow that was coming from the two to the south.
So just yes or no, you're dropping,
Yes.
You're dropping the ditch 2 feet.
This ditch is, the new ditch is 2 feet below the 39 legal grade.
Okay, and then who's paying to move the tile pumps? Who's paying to move the tile pumps that are existing along?
That is a point of debate. I think it'll be up to the board. There's 4 pumps that are impacted. 3 of them are functional. So we did talk to the property owners who own those pumps, and they said they would move them at their own expense if we would work with them. In other words, I would help them tell them how far to be away, and so they would. I think I can't speak for those folks, but if the project had to pay for it, I think with the electrical and the excavating, you probably are looking at $4,000 to $5,000 a piece to move. Would be a reasonable estimate, and so that would be covered with the contingency money that we usually plan for a project that we run into unknowns. The other thing that the contingency fund handles is the utilities that have to be moved. And right now we estimate that cost to be about $80,000 to move the known utilities that we know are in the way. So.
Personally, I think that's private property, they should have to move themselves.
That could be very well true.
Thank you, Mike. Gene, you had
I got a quick follow-up on the project. Are they currently installed according to our permits for off the right of way? The current right of way?
I can't answer that, Gene.
And that's something we'll take into consideration.
right here, sir.
My name is Dan Pate. My brother and I own the southeast quarter on Sullivan 8. My question is to the viewers. I feel our values are added too high at that part of the project. How much of this project was benefits were added because of protection on that parcel? Drainage plus, how much of it was for protection? Section 8, Sullivan.
So do we have the map? Can we put the map up? Can you point it out on the map? Can you point it out on the map? Can we blow that up a little bit? Right here? Yes, okay. So basically the way, when the benefits are looked at, the prime benefits in that area 1, at 350, those are based on increased value. And we look at those other benefits differently because of different situations on the properties. Similar properties we look at together. We did a couple of things. We look at what would the value of benefit be if we look at reducing that amount from that original. We looked at it that way. But we also then ran an output calculation for just to see what on this particular project, based on the number of miles we have coming into the system, what the proportion of the cost for maintenance would be, and that came out to $200. So based on that, we looked at it, we were looking at on the higher end of an outlet fee, it would be $200. But then we also looked at limiting factors to that. So a lot of these have secondary outlets. We kind of looked at it as, once you get the new system in there, that's going to be a 10-year system. The systems north and south, they're only at a 3-year design. So if you get that 10-year event, this system's going to be pulling water off of those other systems. So it's a little different system that way. So we looked at it as having voltage benefits or like a secondary outlet benefit or something less, depending on proximity to the system, elevation is taken into account. But that 200 part of that came from just running a calculation. If we gave you no benefits all and gave you an indirect benefit, but a lot of it is based on the scale of the project. You know, it's a $2 million project. So out of that, that's kind of how those numbers came out. So, in our opinion, we thought it was fair. We dropped those, some of those in the 200 there are right next to the system or fairly close to the system. But we didn't feel they had, they weren't at the level of benefit of 350 either. So we kind of looked, I guess that's how I can tell you. We looked at it a couple different ways. We had to put a number on it. That's the number that we used.
Question? Sir? State your name, please.
Curtis Robinson here. Couple questions. Is there any cross culverts, Jerry, from section 9, a half mile line to the moraine, along that ditch system? Right now, there's none. So on the north side of 65, from there, up to the center, there's no cross culverts.
No, there's not.
There's not going to be any on the new system either?
If you need one, we'll put one in.
No, I'm just kind of wondering, because on section 8, that Dan was just talking about the next quarter to the west, which is Novacek's, they're using that ditch for a underground tie-in that doesn't have a pump. So that should be, if they didn't have that, they wouldn't be able to tile that without a pump. So that should be different than our peaks in the winter.
When we did our original survey 2 years ago, we looked for everything we could find that was going through County Road 65, and I think they were primarily 18-inch pipes, very small, and there was probably only 3 or 4 of them in the whole. There are no, further to the east, there was no township road culverts even going into it. There was just dry intersections. So we could see where, your water could move south unless we put some openings in. So we did plan on putting one on each side of every township road and then putting one in probably where there was an existing 18-inch, which is way too small for what is trying to flow west on the north side of the highway. So I think that's a good reason to put some benefit on the county road, because it's certainly going to dry up that north ditch, and it's going to give the people on the north side of the road access to the ditch if they want access to the ditch. I mean, you're going to have to dig a ditch to our culvert, or you're going to have to tell me where for example, if you wanted a culvert here.
No, I'm not asking for one. I'm asking if there is one.
I don't believe there is now. We didn't see one. A lot of times it overlooks it.
There, yeah, I hope that, I don't know, quite a while ago, one of our first meetings, we were talking about County Road 20, and nothing was going to go past there. A lot of people were kind of for it, as long as we weren't opening up a can of worms for 66 to be dumped in there, which then brings in the 2 in Poland's, because by now we all know it comes cross country. And same, I can't remember the other Poland straight east.
Brangus.
Is it Brank that's straight east now?
Brangus.
Okay. Well, anyway, now all of a sudden we're putting another culvert in. You're saying we're choking down the 36-inch that's there. We're just opening up. I'm sorry guys, nothing personally, but the watershed, once you give them an inch, you take them.
The problem is this, Kurt. The water is going to get here and here if we don't do anything. Right now, the water does move down the township and it goes around this approach. It washes it out all the time. And it gets here and it waits until it gets high enough.
Are you on 66 there?
This is 66 over here. So this is County Road 20 right here.
Okay. But I'm fooling over with one of the guys that's not on the board anymore, and we've seen multiple times where farmers have opened up that ditch 66, and that's why we have breakouts. Why aren't they filling those breakouts back in and putting the water where it belongs? And cure the problem. I mean, yeah, highway, or ditch number 2 up there by Papes is not a good ditch. That stuff's not so bad, whatever, but on the other hand, we're sitting, I have section 13 of Sullivan, and we're sitting down there, and well, we can all say which elevation it is, but I believe it's about 9 inches per mile. And it just comes down there, and I got that. What's that?
That was my phone.
But you know what I want to say about that, Kurt, is that a large event blows this well out. The farmers who farm to the east of it maybe think, well, I didn't do it, but I ain't gonna plug it. But the town, there's folks along this section that have paid money out of their own pocket to put that spoil back up. I know Paul Zavrel's been out there on different occasions trying to patch. But what the problem is you got a huge amount of runoff running down about a 2-year event ditch. And just keep in mind, 66 was built in 1905. And believe me, there's a lot of water coming that way. So, irregardless of how should it happen, could we stop it? I don't think we can stop it without having a major project that I don't want to have anything to do with. Because that's going to cause everybody on 2 to have a heartache. And I think what you got now is you got status quo and you got measured overflow that we're trying to deal with in a realistic way. We're saying we're not going to take any more water than we're already taking, but we're going to have to account for taking it. Just to say we don't want the water and we're not going to take it anymore means we're just going to stop. And I think I don't see anybody here from Polk County. They have no appetite to tackle that problem.
A question, you recognize the name,
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
You had mentioned that the,
State your name for the record.
Mark Holding, that you had mentioned that some landowners have taken it upon themselves, and Paul Zavrel's been out, and I remember what you all said. Polk County has, and I have done at least 10 to 12 washout fixings, and Polk County does have, if they won't pay for the full amount of the bill, they do a cost sharing or whatever. We have fixed on the north side of Keystone 11, which is a lower ditch bank. We've fixed all of the washouts in that area. We've also pulled debris and trees out of Keystone 2, the short right south of Chirac. We've fixed that one, and we've also had requests in further up the ditch system in Tabor Township to work there. So the county has been very
good to work with. There's just a process that needs to be gone through, so forth and so on. So you're right, people have tried to fix the breakouts.
Sir?
Yeah, Brent Strickler. So I suppose everybody's frustrated with the 66 guys, and that would be me. So when they talk about the water coming, it starts about with me, maybe Gene, and then me. But I guess my reason for coming to the meeting today is really just kind of say that the Ditch 66 system doesn't really work already, and it feels like a double whammy on this to pay benefits to something that already doesn't work. And part of the reason for that is the impoundment. The impoundments have been overall a good deal, but the Ditch 66 is not prepared to handle that water. So when it spills over, we're all talking about the spillover time. That coulee is running at almost all times during the year for that ditch. So it is handling way more water. And I just look at it like it's a multi-pronged problem here. And when they want to assess the 66 ditch, I'd like to see some improvement in how that functions. The coulee coming from the south that comes into this corner that they're talking about, I don't feel that ditch is being assessed properly. That starts south of Euclid, and that is as much water flow as the ditch 66 when you look there and see that coming. And that is on the viewers' benefited schedule of payments. I am part of the 200,000 assessed benefits, but that ditch is bigger than the 66 ditch where it meets that intersection, and that water starts on the other side of 75 South Euclid. So if we're talking about spreading out $200,000, that's the number, I think we've got to spread it out farther. And if that's whatever that means, because I don't feel like I should be able to be assessed a benefit on my water twice. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Sir?
Yeah, I guess when I was hearing about that flat spot you talked about, removing water.
What's your name, sir?
I'm Ray Folsom. That flat spot, you said talked about not moving as well. I think, benefit, when you talk about benefits, you'll get benefits sometimes you won't, but if you do this ditch, you're gonna get more water to move. Thunderstorms aren't always the same. Somebody might get more rain out east, might not get much rain towards to the Grand Marais as much. So it'll get rid of that water for those guys out east. If everybody gets drenched with a whole pile of rain, is it gonna help? It's gonna help, but it's not gonna be a perfect situation. We're just trying to do the best we can here, I think. We're not trying to, if everybody wants to have a perfect situation, well then, I don't think it's on this earth. We're just trying to improve, so I think I'm just really pro to have a ditch, because it's better than where we're at now, so.
Yeah. Thank you. Is there one over here that just, sir?
Dan Driscoll, landowner in Sullivan Grove, White Homes, and we got a piece in Keystone 17. And when this all started, a group of us met at Curtis Amundsen's shop. And time to go and rake, and either up to County Road 66 or maybe to the Keystone line, like a lot of the ditches have been fixed. And then 6 months later, you hear, they're going to go all the way to County Road 20. The problem with the ditch is not way out east, it's Sullivan, if there is a problem. Today we're here talking about all this, and all we're talking about is 66. That wasn't the plan originally. Somehow this got pushed way east, and I'm chairman of the Keystone Township too, and we told these
hopefully I do in the east and I'm gonna fight it. So, that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other petitioners here that will sign the petition? Sir, if you have a question, you'll make it ready.
I just got a comment I'd like to address the board. I'll start with the good news. The good news about the disastrous 2019 fall weather event was that it was an excellent opportunity to witness the functionality of that ditch or the lack of it. And Jerry pointed out that there's, at the preliminary hearing and again today, that there's been attempts to deal with this inadequacy over the years, and it's never been good enough. And so the fact that we need this improvement is definitely justified if you look at the amount of crop loss that there was last fall. I don't think anybody can dispute the amount of, that's not the way it's calculated, the benefits exceed the cost, but the crop loss last fall would have more than paid for the ditch, so as far as that goes. And but I trust that the board will make the right decision in this matter today. And I can guarantee you that if you don't, if something isn't done with this ditch, it'll be brought up in the future, just like it has been addressed numerous times in the past. And basically, future generations will thank you for making the right decision.
Can you state your name for the record?
Oh, Ron Watching.
Thank you, Ron. Any other comment? Mark?
Mr. Chairman, three things. Quickly, I'd like to apologize to you personally and to the board, as I needed to state the violations at the opening remarks. Secondly, I'd like to, a petition was floated around here at the beginning of the meeting. It came up to me. I'd like to present that as a matter of official record, and some of the other paperwork that I was not allowed to submit.
That's the process we're here for.
And thirdly, I have one question of the viewers.
Okay, your apologies accepted.
The monetary calculations, which I don't want to get into, gentlemen, you made comments when you all stood up and talked about your experience and so forth and so on. Most of you said you've done numerous viewing on many projects, and thank you for that. I'd like to know how many times you've done an appraisal project.
I don't understand what you mean.
Acting as an appraisal. In the section here, you, in the report that was submitted, which is titled Appraisals Report, and 6 times in the first 2 pages, you gentlemen state appraisers in pursuant to section, whatever it is, 113E, 305, that you're operating as appraisers, which 305 indicates it's
Can we keep this to a question, not an interrogation?
Getting to the question.
I'll get to the question, Mark, because I don't think these guys are here to be interrogated by you.
I'm not
They're working for
interrogating.
the word.
I asked the question, how many times you have done appraisal projects ordered by the board, watershed board, to do appraisals?
I'm not really sure how to answer the question, because I think sometimes that term viewers and appraisers is used interchange. But under ditch law, viewing is disinterested parties. You don't have to be like a licensed appraiser. But I know in some cases they use that term gets interchanged. That's the best I can tell you. We've done many drainage system projects and viewers reports. Like I say, I think sometimes that term gets interchanged. I'm not the attorney. We go out, we view the systems based on the way the drainage statute says. And from my understanding, that means a disinterested party. You do not have to be an appraiser. So it could be a farmer, it could be someone that's worked real estate. It's done all over the state that way. But as far as the actual definition and what you're looking for, I can't answer your question.
Sure, one more question. Which one of you gentlemen,
Which one of you gentlemen drafted the document that was submitted and approved by the Red Lake Watershed Board?
Which document are you referring to?
the document that was approved by the Red Lake Watershed Board on 1/23 of 20?
There was more than one document submitted, so which one are you referring to?
Officially, it was titled the appraiser's report, and it was also filed at the same time at the same meeting. Mr. Kirby will file the final engineering report, and the board acted and approved that item.
Okay.
So I'm just asking that document, whether you call it a viewer's report or a appraisal report, I'm not here to debate that. I'm wanting to know who drafted. You gentlemen obviously did the monetary calculations to insert into that document. I'm wanting to know who drafted that document.
There was more than one document submitted. There's a benefit damage statement, and the other one I believe is the Excel spreadsheet that outlines benefits. Two documents come together. I can't remember exact timing on those. Rob and myself.
I think you did that as a group, Jerry. I'm not sure that needs to be explained. You're not on a witness stand here. Do you have any other questions that's regarding just the project itself, or through the engineer?
Mr. Kurbula, you and I had spoke numerous times concerning this project. When I gave you notice, I think it was last week, and I stated to you as a longtime family friend, win, lose, or draw on this project, Mr. Kurbula is the engineer for this project. Statements like he made today that he'd be workable with the local landowners, I find that to be very true. Of this overall estimated project, and I think I've seen somewhere approximately, $2.1 million. 200,000 of that is estimated to be the 1 mile segment for the extension. Could you please just give me an estimate of the cost related when you're talking about relocation of utilities, drainage pumps, if the project has to pay for that, the difference between Keystone and Sullivan Township, just a ballpark, is it 60% Sullivan, 30% Keystone? Just a ballpark.
Okay, I'll talk about the utilities. We have PKM, Wickstrom, CenturyLink, and Marshall Polk. We have 2.25 miles of PKM overhead. We have Wickstrom, we have 3 miles of fiber. Marshall Polk has some minor crossings, and CenturyLink has 2 crossings. So I would say, if you want to know, that probably we have about $90,000 worth of utilities to move. Of that, 80,000 is in Sullivan Township. What was the other question?
The overall cost.
Oh.
It's stated 200,000 is for the extension.
Right.
The difference between overall costs, approximately, I realize that has not been bid. Just your, you kind of know the curve calculations, just an approximate percentage of the overall cost minus the 200,000 extension between the difference between Sullivan and Keystone Township.
I'll try to answer that really succinctly. The petition came through very explicit. It spelled out the parameters that they wanted. They expressed their concern, and they said that they would like the engineer to do this. A result of that petition required us to design the ditch that fairly accommodated what their wishes were. And so in the end, when you a typical ditch like this, and we're trying to work on one now, it's over just north of the St. Louis Road. In the first 2 miles of that ditch, 70% of the earthwork is there. So, but that earthwork is necessary to go 9 miles further. So it's not a direct proportion, you know, that the work we do in Sullivan Township only benefits Sullivan Township. But to answer, I think probably based on that ditch, and by the way, this ditch is not going to be as pronounced as that one, and it's going to not be so troublesome to dig, because right there we're digging a new ditch where there is no ditch and there's just a heck of a lot of groundwater. But here you've got an existing ditch that you're digging 4 feet deeper, and I think it's going to go a little bit better than that one is, depending on the weather. But so based on that project, I would say 70% of the dirt is probably 80% of the dirt is in Sullivan. But one thing about these projects, the culverts are just as much as the dirt work, and the culverts are similar in both. So, you know, overall, maybe it is a little disproportionate, but when the water runs downhill, you just have to take it there. So, you know, we never studied stopping anywhere other than where the petition said. So, you know, I could just guess, you know, I can say for certain that the bottom costs a lot more than the top.
Your last one, Grill, somebody else.
Thank you. Mr. Pergilla, after the preliminary hearing, the petitioners and you and I spoke outside of that hearing, just fixing this corridor once and be done, and tying this ditch directly into ditch 66, relieving pressure on 66. You made a comment that unfortunately this project would have to be twice as big to handle all the capacities, to even take a 10% or a 20% reduction of ditch 66 water through the corridor, which is economically unfeasible, and I get that. Unfortunately, this project, the project to the north, project 16, are draining into the Grand Marais coulee. The Grand Marais coulee is not the river to the north. We're not, unfortunately, we live at the bottom of the bathtub, and we're trying to drain all of this water about 2 inches away from the main drain. And all of these projects that are coming forward, whether they come forward in the ditch 11, watershed ditch 11, drains into the Grand Marais. The other 2 county ditch projects that were done, they drain into the Grand Marais. And repetitive ditches are added to the Grand Marais system, where that system is overloaded. And over time, as these ditches are modified and extended, or new projects come forward, we're going to reach maximum capacity in the Grand Marais coulee. We're probably there already at multiple high rain, high flow event times. And currently, ditch 39 can handle, we've had numerous single 4 and 5, 6 inch rains out there, and the ditch function. Are there some problems, cattails, blah, blah, blah? Yes, there are. The ditch functions. It's the multiples of multiple 3, 4 inch rains that cause the problem for the system. But it also causes problems for other systems and dramatically increases the height of the water in the Grand Marais coulee. 10 years from now, if other projects are allowed to drain into the Grand Marais project, could it be a possibility that this project, the improvement of ditch 39, if more water is allowed to go into the Grand Marais, where the elevation of the Grand Marais could exceed the drainage capacity of this ditch, proposed ditch?
I'll try to answer that. minutes list, I can't. First of all, it was in a preliminary report, but this project is viewed as being early water. In other words, it's water close to the ultimate outlet, which is not Hudson Bay, but the Red. And there's learned people that say it's really good to get early water out of the system rather than piling it on when the late water comes. So when we do apply for a permit, the DNR looks at that, and the Murray is more than active, more than adequate, but I think everybody looks at that and says, well, you're just shoving your problem. But the Murray is the outlet, and it's the outlet now. And the net effect of this project could be viewed as beneficial, but at best I would say it's neutral. It doesn't hurt anybody downstream, it doesn't help anybody downstream, but the problem with getting rid of 66 water is there is nobody along County Ditch 2 that wants to see 66 fixed. And that comment to you folks outside that meeting was, if we're going to fix 66, we can't run it to 2. We're going to have to find another way, and that's a humongous, that's changing 66. It's changing this ditch into 66, and that's not what the petition was, and I personally think maybe your comment about overloading the Murray would be valid then, but it's not.
Okay, we got a Gene, you have a
I
question?
got one comment, admit I'll hold my 50 years ago, getting Polk County, I was just a young guy. And with a permit, we moved a petition to sign to fix ditch 66. And we gave it to the county commissioners, and a handful of people on too stopped it somehow. We were going to repair it, not improve it. And back then their comment was, well, we're talking about they are talking about impoundment of use. If that's in place and then they fix the outlet in the Marine, then we would be okay with that. Well, we got 3 impoundments and we fixed the outlet in the Marine. We can take 50% more water, I guess. I think I remember right. So, but it still ain't gonna happen down there. Whatever. And that's where it's gotta start. If you're gonna really fix it.
Okay. Now you got a question, right?
My name is Norma Otvick, and I have a small piece of land on Section 9 Polk County. And on that mile, north-south, I have high ground. Across the road to the east is very low land. And that always splits. So I would imagine somebody wants some excavation on there. But my land, the rain runoff flows to the north. So, you're going to excavate my land so it flows south. I don't want my land excavated.
You
In
understand?
2006, my land was excavated and shelter belt had been removed. And that takes up farmland, and shelter belt is important for erosion. I have a number of points here to discuss. The erosion is a problem because there's only so much topsoil. So I don't want my land excavated. I was wondering who owns the land graphs. The copy is so small, it should be turned the other way, and the print should be enlarged. Mr. Purdue?
There's 12 and 13. That's as big as you can go. Who owns it? Oh, I think I checked on that. In 12, it's owned by Shannon Solom and Jacqueline Johnson on the north, and on the south, it's owned by Curtis Solomon, the whole mile and 13.
Well, I have 3 brothers, and what my brothers told me, that instead of all this high cost excavation, you can bridge. My brother Charles told me there's a lot of cattails in that ditch.
I'm not sure, Jerry, can you explain what the question is? I don't know if I
Yeah.
if I can't hear you.
I think she's wondering if maintenance is the problem. And we do, the trouble with maintenance is they try to accommodate everybody's wishes. And when you take cattails out, it just gets undercut, it gets deeper. And
So how is the flow in ditch 66?
I would say this cattail house, I would say in this 39, if you got cattails, it's cutting your flow below 50%. We got what you call a Manning coefficient. And when engineers design a ditch, they assign a coefficient on how the project and the ditch will be look and how it will be mowed. So when I design it, I'm more of a realist. I know we're going to have, it's not going to be a perfect world, but with cattails now I can say, because I got some pretty good experience with that in Grand Forks County, it cuts the flow in half. And there's nothing you can do to that. You can spray them.
Excuse me for interrupting you. What would be the cost of dredging ditch 66?
Oh, well.
And
I honestly think 66 is probably at or below legal grade anyway, because the county ditch inspector checks it quite regularly, and that's the news he usually comes back with. It's at or below legal grade. So Polk County can't just decide they're going to do something below legal grade. They would have to have an improvement project. And boy, I tell you, we're kind of living with the sins of our fathers, but 66 is what it is, and that's about what we're going to probably live with for a long time.
Apparently the problem with this project.
The problem is that the problem with this project, and Dan Driscoll hit it right on from the beginning, we're taking water we shouldn't have to. But the project we're proposing is, okay, we shouldn't take it, but we are going to take it, and we're going to continue to take it. So let's be realistic and limit the flows that are existing, and don't take any more than we're already taking, but we have to keep the farms, like in section 18 of Keystone. I mean, he's getting clobbered every time those 36-inch culverts overflow by O'Mara. It runs down to Kitty Corner, and it fills up those 2 sections, and then everybody waits and crosses their fingers, and hopefully it stops, because it'll cascade right down to the end. I mean, it keeps raining, the problem just moves west. another mile. It was pretty evident, like this last few years, you get 2 inches of rain one week, 2 inches. By the third 2 inches, everybody was experiencing a lot of crop loss.
That is involving climate change. Involving climate change now. But there's another issue, and that's time. There's probably a lot of time in summer.
We've been spending a lot of time just thinking about this project. I mean, it's been almost 3 years since.
I think we're gonna have to go to the next question, Norma. Thank you for your.
One more comment. I take classes at the University of Minnesota Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. I took a class on government in China. And 60 miles from Beijing, land is worth $240,000. Farmland, $240,000 an acre. And that's Chinese government, because that's all government. So just so you're aware.
Thank you. Any questions from the back? Okay. Your question will be answered once the public's done. The agenda states that the phone-in calls will come last. So you'll have to hold tight. Sir, you better raise your hand off on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, at this type of meeting, I'd like to thank the board for allowing us to speak.
Can you give us your name, sir?
Oh, Charlie Lockett from Sullivan Township. And I'd like to help Jerry with the question on the cross culverts on County 65. Sounds like he's speculating there a little bit. So on section 8, and section 8 was no cross culverts from the north under the road to Ditch 39. Section 9 has 2. One on the southwest quarter and one on the southeast quarter. Section 10 has at least one, and we're going further east, but I know there's more. I just, my comment on the cross culverts is in our area, we have 2.5 quarters that are right next. Well, us, my wife and I are neighbors, 2.5 quarters that are right next to the lake. And one of those quarters has underground tile drainage. So just like I stated in the last meeting, I don't see any necessity to put any more drainage across underneath the County 605 at that location. I will say that the ditch we have on the north side of the road needs maintenance. It has for a long time, and we want our neighbors to have good drainage. We all want our neighbors to have good drainage. But I think the ditch maintenance comes at a much lower cost than the improvement, and it can be just as effective.
Thank you, Jeremy. Is there anybody that would like to speak that hasn't had the opportunity? I think we got the feelings for some, but is there anybody that would like to voice their opinion?
I have a question.
We're going to get you done, but go ahead. What's your name?
Stanley Huckler.
Go ahead, Stanley.
You know, if I'm looking at this map, Ditch 66, that natural disc flows to the northwest, and the Grand Moraine flows to the northwest. Are you with me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Everything north of County Road 65 flows to the northwest. I've been born and raised on that farm, and every time I did ditching for them, it was all going to the north. And I see green on the north side of the road, I see orange on the north side of the road. And that land doesn't have that benefit of that ditch. so I'm opposed to this ditch project.
Okay.
I think your engineer would better reevaluate how they put them colors on the map.
Okay, is there any other comment you'd like to make?
So
Stanley?
I'm opposed to this ditch.
Okay, we'll make that noted. Are there any other phone messages? I think we have 2 other people out there. One is a board member, Les Torgerson, and that'll be open for discussion later, Les. Is there anybody else on the phone? Okay, we're gonna open back up. I think I see a hand out here, there's a fellow on too. Does anybody else have a comment from the public? We're not too far from winding this down. Kurt Dieter, you're public, or are you kind of?
I don't want to be out of turn, so
Well, go ahead.
members are making final comments.
Go ahead.
Members of the board, I'll make this fairly brief. As the board knows, and I'm sure Mr. Sparty will indicate to you, drainage law is totally statutory. In other words, it's set up by the legislature 100 years ago, and under that section of the statute, whether to establish an improvement, it makes it very clear that the drainage authority shall establish. It doesn't say may establish, it says shall establish if you can meet 6 items. The first one is that you've done the proceedings that have been completed, and I submit to you that preliminary, all the proceedings have followed the statute. The reports made or amended are complete and correct, and again, that's your decision. The damages and benefits have been properly determined, again, I believe they have, and I think you, Mr. Kroll and his very experienced viewers have done that correctly. Number 4 is the important one. The estimated benefits are greater than the total estimated cost. As I understand it right now, the cost is about $2,101,000, and the benefits are $2,466,000, a little bit more. And so that section appears to have been met. The 5th one is the proposed drainage project will be a public utility and benefit and promote public health. Again, this is a 100-year-old statute. I think when they wrote the public health part, they were worried about malaria or mosquitoes or something. But I believe the public utility and benefit has been adequately shown, and the project is practicable. And again, your engineer, who you appointed, who seems to have a lot of respect up here, indicates that it is practical. So again, under the statute, if those 6 items are met, it is not right or wrong. The legislature wrote it, that it's not a discretionary decision. Those 6 items, I would submit to you, have been met, and under what I first read, this law is very clear. You shall establish that those 6 items have been met. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt. And I do agree with Kurt. We've met the criteria under the 103E.341 statute. The board is here in order to, when we get a petition, we move forward on it, set in a manner that Kurt is explaining. Whether you're pro or against, friend or foe, I mean, it's a tough spot to be in. But we're here to carry out the law of the land to a certain degree. And every hearing I've been in, there's always been a certain opposition, one way or another. I mean, seldom is there harmony in anything like this. So this isn't something that's easy for the board to do. We try to take the comments. If something was viciously wrong, we table things, we go back and we reestablish. But saying that, I'd like to, if there's any more public comments, then we're going to close the hearing. Either one of you guys, Mark, go ahead.
I'd just like to publicly also state that the numbers are the numbers that the viewers appraisers did. Average on my quarter, my average taxes are approximately $4,300 in Section 9 of Keystone. This project is going to add another $2,000, 100 some odd cents to the assessment roll on that, which puts my total tax bill at well over $6,000 per year for the next 20 years or until the expiration of this of that bond. I feel, yes, water law is water law. Drainage, in a perfect world, we'd all like to be driving Cadillacs. We can't afford this ditch in this current environment. If there was 30 and 40% margins in farming, I think we'd all be in favor of the project. But we're dealing with sub-margin.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, we try to educate people when there's a petition brought in with Myron. The fundamentals that it all, once it entails, once the petition begins, and how it triggers it by law, the laws that we follow. So we try to put it to the people that there's a lot of thought and a lot of thinking going on for your neighbors and the benefit that they're doing. But when people petition, and it's a legal petition, I feel for your conversation there, Mark, but
How many benefited acres there are going into the ditch 66 that would calculate into the 200,000?
It's on a map, I saw it a while ago, it's a lot.
Brent has a question here. Brent, can you state that so we're not gonna start throwing out stuff?
Yeah, Brent Strickler again. My question would be, how many benefited acres would be paying for the one-time $200,000 number, just approximately? And if you don't know it, just get that back to me. I'm just trying to calculate my increase and my landlord's increases and that, you know.
Would that be one for the viewers there?
It's a very vast area. There isn't, we don't have the, can't hear you.
This is the assessment map present, and boy, it's quite a few sections. You know, I think you could just guess let's not guess, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 20, 30 sections divided by 200 would be, what would that be, Gary? $10 an acre total, maybe? So is that 50 cents a year, or you could walk in and pay it off? The problem is this, and I did contact Polk County, and Myron and I did visit. In fact, we went to Crookston and talked to the highway engineer in Jody. And we asked them, do you want to fix 66 or do you want an assessment? And it didn't take them very long. Just give us an assessment.
Okay, Curtis, do you have a question? We're going to wind this down to a couple more questions here, and
Okay, I don't know what I was going to say.
Marlo, one final question.
I worked at the University of Minnesota for a year, pediatric isolation. That's all. I worked at the University of Minnesota hospitals for 15 years. And I didn't pay much attention to my parents' farm. But my parents gave me some land. I'm going to protect that. Well, I have an international law downtown Minneapolis called Dorsey and Whitney. Now, are there any lawyers here? Are there any lawyers?
At least a couple of them.
None of us will admit it.
Are there any lawyers? Mr. Jeffrey?
No, I'm not.
Who's Mr. Jeffrey?
Do you have a question for an attorney, ma'am?
Are there any attorneys here?
There's one right next to me.
Where are you from?
Beaver Falls.
Beaver. Are you involved in politics?
I am not.
There could be some politics going on here. I wasn't aware that there's a difference versus appraisers and viewers. So just so you know.
Thank you for your comment, Marlo. Any more questions other than that? We're going to close the hearing. I think we kind of went over and got the feeling from the people what we want. What we could roll out
Mr. Chair, you'll just be closing the public hearing, not closing the hearing.
I don't know if I got it, John. I mean, Kurt. Nick, down.
Mr. Golding, did you have anything else you wanted to submit as part of the record? I know you submitted, some items here, I don't know if you had anything else.
No, at this time, no, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, this time we're gonna close the public hearing. I need a motion to engage in that.
Again, it's just the oral.
You said oral. Okay, we close the public hearing.
No, the public comment.
The public comment, okay. See, John Colbert, maybe Kurt would have told me that. Now we're up to Red Lake Watershed Board discussion. There's a couple different ways if the board wants to move for different information. To follow by the established and proposed drainage to the. Yeah.
Just for the board's purpose, I know that Kurt Peter. For the board's purpose, I know that Kurt Peter went over 103E341 in regard to establishing a proposed drainage project. So the drainage authority shall establish by order a proposed drainage project if it determines that the detailed survey and viewers report have been made and other proceedings have been completed under this chapter. The reports made or amended are completely correct. The damages and benefits have been properly determined. The estimated benefits are greater than the total estimated cost, including damages. The proposed drainage project will be a public utility and benefit. It will promote the public health, and the proposed drainage project is practicable. Also, the drainage authority must dismiss the proceedings and petition by order if it determines that the benefits of the proposed drainage project are less than the total cost, including damages awarded, that the proposed drainage project will not be of public benefit and utility, or the proposed drainage project is not practicable after considering the environmental, land use, and multi-purpose water management criteria in Minnesota Statute 103E.015, subdivision 1. So essentially, those are the two standards before the board in regard to the findings that have to be made at the hearing.
Board discussion? Brian?
This would be a question for Jerry. In a 10-year frequency event, what would be the discharge in CFS out of 39? You probably stated it, I just didn't catch it. Just ballpark anyhow.
It's, take me a second here. The discharge at the bottom end is 280 CFS.
All right, thank you.
Any further board discussion? Gene?
I got a comment. The comment was made that the watershed just keeps taking until we take a mile. I don't lay at home at night thinking how I'm going to screw my neighbors or just keep taking.
Right.
We get this petition, we don't ask for it. We have to deal with it. And that's what we're doing. And if they meet all this criteria.
That's right. That's exactly.
And I have driven up there a lot. I live up there. 2016 was horrible. Last fall was worse. You get a mile or so, 2 miles west of the American Island, and there was nothing but water. You couldn't see them, and the water wasn't moving.
And I'd like to comment that if you see the Red Lake watershed ditches, the legal ditches that are maintained, there's something wrong, they get taken care of. I don't think anybody can say that they don't have a good maintenance program to them.
One other comment, if I voted against this, I would have to recuse myself because this is going to cost me money. And I'm paying benefits on ditch 2. I'm going to be paying on ditch 66 twice. So, there you go.
Okay. Any further board discussion? Ryan?
Okay, I got a question for the board after hearing some of the testimony and comments today. And 66 overflows from time to time. And I'm not familiar with the area, but I keep my eyes and ears open, or ears anyhow. Is 200K enough to assess? I will refer to it as an outlet fee, but that's not technically statutorily correct. But for 66, the jury's got a response to that.
I thought exactly what you said. That can't be enough. So I had my son Nick run it twice, 3 times I said, yeah. Well, he says the reason there isn't such a big difference is because the bottom end has to be what it is anyway. So he says, to be fair, you know, I told you a big 280 and 100 coming on from someplace else. So, in my mind, maybe they should pay a third. It's a third of the flow, but we were asked the actual cost of building something that would.
Thank you. Any further board comment? This is just board comment now.
Why did you have a police officer sitting in the back of the room?
We're not commenting on that now.
The police officer in the back of the room.
Any further board discussion at this time?
Hearing none, I'll move that we establish the project as meeting all the criteria set forth in the Minnesota statute 103D 341. Directly to council to prepare findings and order, in order, confirming the findings of the viewers and establish the drainage model.
We got a motion by Gene Tierman to set effect. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Second by Leroy Olsey. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Les, are you there? Aye.
Here.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Leroy, second.
I'll second it.
Second by Les. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.